After I was discharged from the Marines honorably to go to medical school, then I was called to active duty. That was the time when all male doctors who were fit were called to active duty in one branch of service. It was the Public Health Service that took me. I was 2 years at the National Institutes of Health with some very interesting duty there. The Cuban Missile Crisis happened during that period, and we were all told that our unit, the infectious disease unit, would be landing in Cuba if the crisis didn't end, and they expected us not to come home. Very sobering for a young person with a family. So I learned at that point that anyone in uniform may go in harm's way any time. After I was done my time in the Public Health Service, I was allowed to transfer to the Navy, and during my Navy time, I had many very interesting experiences. I twice volunteered and went to Vietnam. Was probably the last Navy surgeon ever to do an operation in Vietnam. And after I came back from Vietnam, I was really motivated. I went to U.S. Army Airborne School and became the first Navy medical officer to qualify as a Navy and Marine Corps parachutist. Other jobs along the way included some very responsible jobs with the North Atlantic Treaty Operation, NATO exercises, and also 5 years at the Pentagon and 3 years at the National Naval Medical Center. I was there during the first Gulf War. Very anxious period. I was chairman of the Disaster Preparedness Committee, and we were prepared for truly mass casualties that were expected from the first Gulf War. So my military experience all started with the Marines, and it ended with the Marines. I'm still a Marine, but I'm glad to be here tonight and talk about it.
Captain George Hill, a fifth-generation Iowan, also a veteran, distinguished surgeon, professor, and a celebrated author. Prolific in medical and historical writings, Captain Hill would return to his early roots by writing extensively on American history. Born in 1932 in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, son of a small-town banker and a college teacher. Dr. Hill graduated from Yale College and Harvard Medical School. He then went on to complete surgical training at Cornell in New York and Peter Bent Brigham Hospital in Boston. Professor Hill taught in the University of Colorado, Washington University, St. Louis, Marshall University, West Virginia, and UMDNJ, Newark. Now retired, Dr. Hill remains professor of history at Kean University in New Jersey, professor of surgery at Mount Sinai School of Medicine, and professor of surgery at the Herbert Medical School of the Uniformed Services University of the Health Sciences, Bethesda, Maryland. Dr. Hill is married to Professor Helene Zimmerman. They reside in New Jersey and have 4 children and grandchildren.
The Medical Society of New Jersey was actually started in 1766, before the Revolutionary War, and is now the oldest continuously operating medical society in any state in the United States. Now, that goes back a long ways, 1766, but actually the practice of medicine in Essex County began 100 years before that, when the English first arrived on the shores of the Passaic River and founded the town, then a village, which is now known as Newark. And perhaps even 2 years before that, when Englishmen came from Long Island and settled on the west bank of the Arthur Kill to found the town that is now known as Elizabeth. It's my pleasure to be able to say a bit this evening about the history of the Essex County Medical Society, which, as you know, was founded in 1816, one of 5 county medical societies that were established through an act of the New Jersey legislature that rechartered the Medical Society of New Jersey on its 50th year of existence. The era of the Civil War was sort of the beginning in America of the Industrial Revolution. It's right here in our neighboring county of Passaic County, Patterson. The silk mills that were powered by the Passaic River, and the dye industry that was associated with that, and also the iron industry, iron and steel. Of course, Patterson was a major hub of that. There wasn't so much of that in Essex County. What Essex County had was brass making because of the copper mines in Belleville, and these mills extended. There was an enormous one in Glen Ridge right now, where the ball field is on Bloomfield Avenue, was a bronze mill at one time, and all the diseases that spin off of working with metal, lead poisoning and mercury poisoning, particularly men in this area, particularly Bakeland in Bloomfield and Thomas Edison, discovered that you could make extremely hard new products out of phenol and formaldehyde compressed under high pressure and high temperature. And they produced the phonograph records of Edison, and they produced the Bakelite that was used as a wood substitute. The side effects of it in the workers and in the neighborhoods downstream, the pollution with phenol and formaldehyde was impressive. At that time, polychlorinated biphenyls that were produced by General Electric Company, originally Thomas Edison's company in Schenectady, New York, they line the whole Hudson River to this day. We had in the town of Orange, that was the hat capital of America, maybe the hat capital of the world, mercury poisoning from making hats, the Mad Hatter. Doctors knew what the cause of it was, but how to control it was a real problem. The history of the Essex County Medical Society I've spoken on several times. Now, how many here can remember anything that I said at any of those? One hand raised. Wow. So I can give the same talk again, right? In fact, I expected that answer, which led me to think maybe I better not give the talk at all, but talk about something else. I have it all written down here, all ready to go. But I decided that in my career, my additional sort of career as a historian, I learned one thing very early, and that is that in the ecumenical world of the academy, as they call it, the universities and that sort of thing, we don't have BC and AD. We have BCE, before the Christian era. And I suddenly realized that's the history of the Essex County Medical Society. That's all I need to tell you tonight. There's BCE, and there's everything after that. And BCE is, of course, before Caggiano and Ellenberger, right? Let me just emphasize history with one thing. Take a look at this behind me, all blown up here, and try to figure out what it means. Well, let me say this. We started at a tavern. The first meeting of the Essex County District Medical Society, which then included Union County and I think maybe a piece of Passaic, back in 1816, the year after the Second War of Independence ended, they started this society. And they started at this tavern, and here, sure enough, there's a martini cup. And at the top here, I mean, this is a caduceus, and you understand that. What in the world is that bare-bottomed lion rampant with a kukri knife? What in the world does that have? I'm looking at it for the first time right now, and I've got some investigation to do. I don't know why a lion rampant facing Dexter with a kukri knife is the symbol on the top of the Essex County Medical Society. Does anybody know?
He's a surgeon.
That's right. So it's a kind of a scrawny lion. I mean, really skinny. Doesn't have a good mane, and certainly doesn't have.
That's because he's working for managed care.
That's it. That's it. So the history of the society teaches us a few lessons. There were some very important early things. Early on, the society formed to control the practice of medicine in this part of the state, because it also included, as I say, Elizabeth. And the problem was that there were a lot of irregular practitioners who were doing things that they called medicine, and the doctors, they didn't have MDs in those days. First MD who was a president of the society was about 100 years later.
But they wanted to make sure that medicine was well practiced, and they wanted to control it. And so they petitioned the state early on. This was actually 50 years before the society was formed in 1816. Doctors from Essex County and some of the other counties petitioned the state to control the practice of medicine. And we asked the state to do then what we now are saying, we've had enough of it. To read the early minutes and see the petitions to the state to regulate medicine, to keep all those outsiders out, and to see the flip side of that now, it's really amazing. So that's one thing they did. The other thing they wanted to do was to be sociable. And it didn't always work, because right in the earliest days of the society, there was a Tory in their midst. And how do you become sociable when you have a person who was on the other side in the most important event in your lifetime? They accommodated it. He was a president of the society, but they never liked him. And the records are very clear that there are some things that happen that are very unpleasant, but they're kind of papered over. And don't we need to do that today? Because we got to put harmony first in the end rather than conflict.